Good morning, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to speak to you.
I say good morning because it's morning for you, but it's pulling into the evening for me because you are in Australia. And I'm so excited to have you on the hook with Matt Wilson. So greetings.
Thank you. Yeah. Welcome, or hello, I should say, from the lockdown capital of the world. Nice to see you.
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to give us a news report, but I'll let you decide on that.
All I'll say is it ain't what it seems, and I don't really know why the U.S. press has picked up on this idea that there's some kind of draconian thing going on down here. That ain't it. What we've done is, I think, been relatively sensible, keep our protocol to where our cases are reasonable, and now everyone's out and everyone's playing and everyone's singing and dancing, and I think in 3 days we open up international borders, and I consider myself lucky to have been here where the crazy has been dialed down to a minimum. So I'm real happy with how it's turned out.
Well, as part of the promo, I will mention that there is a on the scene report from Australia.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
So, okay, so I'm going to let everybody know the very inside baseball. Here. I'm going to say it. Tim is a mentor of mine, and there would not be a Hooks Lessons on Performance, Business, and Life from a Working Musician, which is the book this podcast is based. There would not be that without Tim Levy. I hired Tim to be a consultant on writing the book, and was he ever? And I'm extremely grateful for that. And I'm going to warn everybody here that if Tim is fully open and sharing, you are about to go to a master class on business and marketing and speaking and writing and whatever we get into, because Tim is one of the most genius business minds I've ever had an opportunity to sit down with. So I'm excited about this.
Well, man, thank you. I'll try not to keep too many secrets.
No, come on now. I was thinking, before I was talking to you, I was thinking about, that people talk about life hacks, right? Here's a life hack. Well, I got a life hack for you. Go out and start a podcast, and then invite really powerful, knowledgeable people to come talk on the podcast so you can get all the information. That's a little life hack for you, right? Okay. So, I was thinking the other day, I was talking to someone the other day, and we were trying to share phone numbers, right? Of other people. And I think someone even said, "What's your mother's phone number?" And I said, "Well, I don't know my mom's. I mean, I got my phone. She's in my phone, but I don't have my mother's phone number memorized." And I bring that up because, Tim, I know you. You're a friend. I know all of your skills, or most of them. I know that you're the guy that I need to call on certain things, and we try to work things out. But if I had to introduce you and tell someone specifically about all that you've done, it's like my mother's phone number. I couldn't lay that out. And so I don't want to stumble over that. Do you mind talking about yourself just for a minute as we set ourselves up to go forward today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me see. I want to say that there have been two distinct chapters to my life. So when I was quite young, it was all about entertainment. And I had in my mind that I would start on this spectrum that started with easy, got to hard, started with cheap, got to expensive. And it moved from things I thought were at the easier space, albums, then moving up to books, then television. Live shows were in there somewhere, then television, then feature films. And so when I was quite young, I did do that. I want to say, 18, 20, 25. So I did 4 albums, which were storytelling albums, but they did have music and stuff in them as well. I did a stage show that went all around Australia and had some quite big audiences by the time we were done. I did a bunch of books, particularly children's storytelling books at that time with Random House. And then I had a television show that was on for 3 years on cable and then free-to-air network television in Australia. And then kids came along and I went, well, put that aside because now you got to be the grown-up.
Yeah, right.
And as a grown-up, I started a company that is still going, which has, well, actually, we counted the team recently for sort of bookkeeping reasons. There are 46 people who work for me now. Would you believe this?
I don't know.
And
That's news to
yeah,
me.
yeah. So 46 people on the team now that are in the digital marketing and strategy space. So we do everything from occasionally books like what I helped you with, more conventional stuff like digital marketing, websites, social media. But where we really flourish, I think, is in places like video, YouTube, and so on, and growing businesses, and therefore also growing things like books and speaking careers and things like that. But where I'm up to now is, if that was chapter 2, I'm coming back to chapter 1, which is just a fascinating and amazing time where I'm just about to turn 50 next year, and we're turning the ship back around now that kids and so forth are starting to move out of home and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I'm coming back. So early this year, I started a film production company with the sole purpose of getting back into short films, feature films, documentary series, what have you. And we are 3 in. So I have 3 completed short film scripts. We're in production, cast and rehearsing on 2. And they are sort of, I want to say, movies with meaning. That's the context, right? And so how do we do things that are really popular, great fun, action, drama, comedy, but have that heartwarming, amazing, meaningful context, not dissimilar to a book like this one, right?
Right.
And so I'm kind of in that space now. And also along the way, we picked up a documentary series, or maybe more than one. So we're moving back in that direction. So now what I'm doing is taking all those chapter 2 things, which is how to grow a business, and using all of that to how do you grow a tribe? How do you grow viewership around a content project like a short film, feature film, or documentary series, and going into production on all those things. So it is an amazing time. Oh, and I should drop one other thing that is worth knowing. At the end of all of that chapter 2 stuff, we got into investing in a big way. And you and I have spoken about this, Matt, a little bit. My most recent book, and would you believe there's been 13 now, because I did start writing books in the more sort of grown-up space, is called Forever Money, which is in the investment space. And that's the thing that has freed me up to be able to do these next things. So I don't know, maybe that's a longer answer than you were looking for.
You're like the Apple store. You walk in, you want all of it. I want every bit of that. I want the investment advice. I want to learn more about speaking. I've gone to the book part of the store and bought that. Now I want, man, I'm telling you. Yes. Okay. So because I don't want to bury this for those who are listening, I want to get it at the front. TimLevy.net is where they can find out all of your books, because folks, listen to me. Tim is a treasure trove of information. I don't want to speak on his availability, but I do know that if you're out there and you're thinking of writing a book, or you're needing to get a boost in your business, or you want some marketing tips, or you want to get some ideas on how to manage your YouTube account, or you're an actor and you want to be in a film, I don't know. It sounds like it's all out there and available to you to go from. Yeah.
There's 3 websites that are worth knowing about. There's timlevy.net, which is really where I kind of put my stuff that's arguably more so about me. So books and some of the old TV stuff we did and all that sort of stuff, that's all there. All the old albums, which are now on Spotify, would you believe? The studio stuff is, the studio is called Resonant Blue. So resonant.blue is where all the studio stuff is. So when we're doing casting and short films and all that sort of stuff, that's where we announce that. And then I want to say the chapter 2 company, right? The digital marketing strategy, that's timlevyandassociates.com. Okay. And availability is the thing. My answer is less and less.
I understand. Well, I want them to know about you. I as you know, because you're part of the book, I wrote about you in the book, and honestly, you and I had been talking to each other. We were friends, but we would talk professionally, and it was about 10 years from the time that I met you until I actually hired you, for lack of a better term. So I want people to know of you, anyone listening to this, know of you, and be able to at least have you as a reference throughout their time, because you never know when folks come together. Speaking of time, we talked off mic, if you will, and I know that our time is limited here, so I want to jump into the heart of the matter. Sure. Again, this is On the Hook with Matt Wilson. And we're talking about principles and thoughts come from my book, Hooks, lessons on performance, business, life, and working musician. Tim has chosen 3 hooks today to talk about, and we're going to start. So the first hook, and typically what I'll do here is I'll read the hook and then just let you surf, and then we'll go at it, right?
Great.
So Tim, the first one that you chose is hook 36. It's on page 135 for those that are reading along in their book, right? And it says hook 36, forecast the need for change and reinvention. Now, I have some thoughts about how this might apply to you, but I want to hear your thoughts first, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I'm keen to hear you summarize where you're at and so forth. But I wrote some notes down here, and if I'm just looking at that as a hook in terms of how it's been relevant, what I would say is that it's very easy, especially from a work point of view, but maybe also a personal point of view, to hit a certain spot and just kind of coast. And, like you hit a certain point of learning, whether that's in, I don't know, how you deal with kids, or maybe it's in your professional skills, right? And you hit a spot and you just kind of go, I'm good. I know how to do this thing, rinse and repeat. Right. And I actually think that is also known as stagnation. And I think that's also known as death. I mean, if you aren't moving forward, you're dying, right? Yeah. And so what I've noticed is that it is those times of reinvention that are the most fulfilling. And here I am, nearly 50 years old, and I'm still absolutely finding this to be true. And I'm always amazed at the new things I'm finding. So what I would say is that if you could have time, if you can create resources to be in an ongoing learning space, whether that's day to day or whether that's a month out of every year or what have you. And there are so many resources around. A couple I was going to mention. So first thing is podcasts. I'm up and out every morning, and I'm listening to podcasts exactly like this one. Either whether you're doing them, which you're doing, Matt, or whether you listen to them, and surfing on the topics that are interesting to you. It makes my exercise, which is walking and running and all that sort of stuff, makes it fantastic. And so I'm constantly finding new things there. And that's free, right? That's just part of Spotify or what have you. Another one I really like is when we're training people. I obviously write books that do teach people stuff, but places like udemy.com, we happen to have a course there. Skillshare.com is another one, kind of an all-you-can-eat learning platform. If you've got a bit more money, masterclass. Wherever it is that you go, whether you go to books, whether you go to courses, whether you go to other people, learning for me is living, and expanding. And I'm constantly fascinated, by the stuff I didn't know that I find out like yesterday. And I'm like, how did I not know that for so long? That's so important. And then, you go from there. And then, of course, for me, I'm going back from that kind of 15, 20 years of being in that kind of career in digital marketing and strategy. And I'm kind of setting that to one side. Okay, we'll use that. But I'm now going back. And I'm a rookie again. And I actually now I find that to be such a pleasure. When you're young, you're kind of like, if I ain't really good at this right off the bat, I don't even want to do it. But right, which is my kids' approach, But now I'm kind of like, wow, this whole new thing I get to play in, and how do I get to accelerate that and grow, which is what's happening in the film space. So I don't know. That's kind of my riff. That if you ain't learning, then if you ain't reinventing, then you're on a pathway to stagnation and death, which sounds dire, but the opposite is learning is just so pleasurable and fulfilling.
You're absolutely spot on that. I remember when we finished the book, we all gave each other a high five, and you patted me on the back and said, Matt, I mean, we spent 8 months together back and forth one way or the other. So you maybe more than that. And we all know what a hard process it was. I mean, it was hard, right? But then, and I thought, hard. And then we finished, you go, now comes the hard part. And I go, what are you talking about? We just did the hard part, right? And okay, so I reference that. I bring that wonderful memory up because I tell people I really wasn't much of a social media participant before the book. I would, hey, here's my kids going to baseball, or whatever, or I'm playing this place, but I wasn't, but I learned it wasn't even just to sell the book. It was just to say, hey, I am here. If someone wanted to do an interview with me, they needed to see that I was on social media. Why do they want to interview somebody that's not participating in the media that everyone else is participating, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the idea for this podcast, okay, so every day I'm coming up with stuff to post. I'm like, well, what am I going to post next? I don't know. And coming up with different graphics and this, that, and the other. And so I thought, well, why don't I have some of my friends and colleagues, if people call, and just talk quickly about a hook. It'd be like a 2-minute thing we post up. Well, from that, then I did my first interview and I realized I couldn't condense it down. And so from that, from seeing that I needed to change, seeing that I needed to do something, then this podcast was born out of that need for reinvention and change. And I mean, I'm not saying this thing's setting the world on fire, but I've had a lot of people comment about how it's helpful and how they enjoy it and keep up the good work. And so now the podcast, even though it's an extension of the book, is even it's its own thing, right? When I wrote the hook, when I initially wrote the hook, and my first thought about it was that sometimes, you mentioned this, and I want you to tell me if this is a little bit what you're experiencing now or a combination of just your desire to change. But sometimes in our careers, we either, like you said, you become stagnant, or maybe the market that we're in, we've grown past it. And whether that's grown like I'm now experienced and I've experienced it enough and I'm not giving it my all anymore. Maybe you become too old. Maybe it's a younger man's market, right? Whatever it may be. But if you see that you might be losing your desire, you might be having a calling or a direction in something else. If you're aware of that and you forecast the need to make that change, then you won't find yourself probably stagnant, or you won't find yourself wondering what is the next move. And you mentioned going back to where you started a little bit. Is this out of desire? Is this out of also you seeing that part of you needs to do so? Does the change need for reinvention apply anywhere in your life right now, Tim?
Well, yeah, no, this is interesting. So this is probably going to overlap to some of these other hooks that we're about to talk about as well. Yeah. Where it came from for me, yes, from a business perspective, the business I'm in, digital marketing and strategy, evolves. So if you ain't getting out ahead of it, then you're behind. And then suddenly the things that you were doing are no longer as relevant or relevant at all. For example, SEO was fresh and new and had some really great outcomes in its first years, and then it became almost a toxic environment, and so if you were still doing SEO 10 years later, there was every chance that you were struggling. And then social media showed up in various forms. And then if you were only doing that, when, from my perspective, YouTube started to really come, then now social media was becoming the stagnant piece. And then if you're only doing YouTube and you haven't paid attention to TikTok, right? So this thing is moving, and life is moving this way. The same is true with, let's say, parenting skills. The same is true at the moment. What I'm finding, we just watched a James Bond movie last night. It was just so much fun. And we're going through the original ones with Sean Connery, and this one was called Thunderball. Now I'm watching this with my wife, who I'm comfortable with anything with my wife and my kids. And I'm watching this going, man, you can't, how did they not cancel this movie? You can't say this stuff.
Right.
What James Bond is doing to these women, you can't do that. So now what we're writing in these short films that I'm doing, I'm constantly going out to, yes, other writers, but the actors and what have you, to say, is this representing today's values, as we move ahead. But for me, what actually has driven me to go from, can I call it chapter 2 back to chapter 1 in a way, but or the new hybrid, which is kind of 1 + 2 = chapter 3, funnily enough, the math works, I guess, is to do with purpose. And this is actually the next hook that I mentioned to you, number 46 here, which is the pursuit of a meaningful life.
Right.
And where I got to was that I started this business in 1996. So, where are we up to 25 something years, is that I felt less motivated to grow businesses using all of these tools. I kind of got to a point of like, listen, I'm nearly 50. I got to be doing things that I find really purposeful and emotionally fulfilling. And so what I started to do is to go into a process, not only on my own, not only in meditation, trying to connect to kind of a sense of the muse, creativity, spirit, but then also to speak to some people who I know are really expert in this space, not dissimilar to yourself. I got some good friends some, Laura Stone, who wrote the book on purpose, right? Pocket Guide to Purpose, and a couple other friends as well, to start having these conversations of where do you go to find this heartfelt sense of this is why I'm here. And when I started to explore that, we started to look for clues. And what are those things that resonate as purposeful? And for me, I went back to some of the most fun and most rewarding times of my life. And really, a couple stood out, and they were from that young, idealistic age. And so that's why, in answer to your question, that's why I started to go backwards to go forwards, is that when I was really meditating, really thinking about this, really dredging up those memories of what's the most fun, and using that as a clue. What am I most passionate about? Using that as a clue to what is most purposeful for me is to take those experiences and now create a hybrid between what I have learned in between and the resources I have internally and externally now to bring to the party. And now we're doing this experiment in short films and so on. And all I can say is each day is an experiment. I'll do a rehearsal because I'm directing. I'll do a rehearsal with actors, and I come out the other end of it and go, that was a really good time.
Yeah,
I just had a really good time. Or I'll be working, even doing stuff like, for example, we're doing motion graphics right now and 3D associated with opening titles. And I've done so much of this, man, over the course of my life. I've just found that now we have, I don't even know how many editors and VFX people and 3D people to give that to, but I didn't. I actually wound up doing some of that stuff by hand. I haven't done that stuff by hand for, I don't even know how long, but I had a great time. And here I am up late and working on the weekend because I'm having a great time. Now I'll still give it to them. They'll improve it, et cetera. We'll collaborate. But I haven't, if you told me 6 months ago, you're putting your hands into motion graphics, I would have told you, hey, that stuff.
I already did that. Right.
I did that. And I'm no longer the best at it. There's younger, brighter men and women who are further along the track than me. Right. I put my hands on the tools and had a good time. So I don't know if that was probably more than you were asking.
No, that excellent. And as we will transition, but I'm gonna mention here in the book I write, I'm quite mindful that my dreams, goals, and desires from say 2005 have changed. They have changed within me, and the path to achieve those goals have become cluttered by those conditions mentioned previously. And those mentioned previously were market changes, but also desire changes. And I talk about myself in the book. I write about myself saying that, referencing what you did, I'm not finding the same meaning. It doesn't mean that I'm not giving it all. It doesn't mean that I'm not doing the very best that I can at the things that I'm doing, but I just felt like I needed to do more. I was called to do more. I was directed to do more. And that's where the book came from. And I guess this main hook is just that if you're attuned to sensing that, like you were, I need to be more in touch with my creative side. I need to go back and feel that excitement and that energy and that motivation that I had when I was a younger man. And how can I find that? It's not that I'm not giving it all to what I'm doing now, but I believe there's more to give if I tap back into some of that excitement and energy of something new.
That's so entirely true. So we do still have some clients, and that business is still certainly running. And we're doing more, I think pretty much 100% stuff by choice now, as opposed to having to sort of, take any client that knocked on the door, which we had to do years ago. But this particular client we're working with, a terrific guy called Sean, and I've been sharing with him this new stuff that's been coming up around, short films, feature films, motion graphics, and we're actually taking that energy, excitement, and learning and mapping it back to what we're now doing. So it's actually improving our game,
right?
Because I'm pursuing this, which is going really nicely. So it's actually bringing everything along with it, which is kind of amazing. And just to take a kind of a wild turn here, by way of something interesting for you to know as well. What I didn't know, I would have mornings where I woke up and I felt less motivated. So you wake up and you're like, okay, I got to go. We had a client, a lovely client, but what we were doing was selling, I'll just say it was weighing scales, right? And weighing scales, it was a terrific client, great people, global company, but they don't kind of, it's not a wildly meaningful thing for me. It was more like, okay, let's do this, let's do it well, let's show up for it, let's be professional. But
right.
I don't wake up tomorrow, in the night, saying to my wife, you know what, profound.
Yeah.
So in some of those days, you wake up feeling a little less motivated, and you're like, oh, okay, I got to get out of bed and go do this thing. Okay, cool. What I didn't know, and this is kind of amazing to me, is that there's actually a biochemical overlay here. I don't know if you know anything about this, and that there are chemicals going on around things like dopamine, where that is a biochemical. I don't know. I'm not the professional on this. There's a biochemistry here that has to do with focus and motivation. In other words, if your dopamine baselines are good, you wake up feeling like you want to take names and kick ass. You have extraordinary energy, you have focus, you have motivation, and you're ready to go out, hunt it down. And so what I also found is if I get my biochemistry right, for example, you get up, get out into the sunlight, which is a cue to wake your body up and start generating things like cortisol and then dopamine, and you exercise with that, maybe have some social interaction as well. You wind up having these. So I learned that if I get up, get out there and just go with a little bit of discipline, then all this biochemistry falls in line. And I have these amazing days. The other one is cold plunge, which I sounded awful. But this morning I went and got a wetsuit because I thought I can't do this. This is too much. But we have a pool. It's a little cold right now. I got out, I jumped in the pool this morning.
Okay.
So now I've got get up, get out into the sunshine, exercise, talk to people, jump in the pool, and you just feel, I can't even describe, but you just feel these levels of excitement and motivation that you haven't had since you were, 10, 20 years before, what have you. Now you bring that to whatever you're doing, in this case, this sort of, purpose-oriented work I'm doing with the short films and what have you. And it just, I don't know. All I can tell you is 50s are looking really, really hot right now.
I like that. A lot of excitement. Well, I'll tell you, you could complete the lesson so far if you told us that you put that on TikTok while you were doing it, jumping in the pool.
I probably
then
should.
we would just we'd have a full TED Talk going on right now, right? Get up, exercise, jump in a cold pool, and film it. Put it on TikTok.
Yeah.
Well, in the book I write about, your body is, and I don't know the hook exactly, but in essence, say your body is a machine, learn its buttons and its levers. And I talk about that from a performance standpoint.
Absolutely.
That is, you're speaking to that point exactly, that there is a way that you can train your body, jumpstart your body, motivate your body, where you get the stuff inside the body to work on its own. It's made to work on its own. Turn it on, right? That's what.
Absolutely.
I
was talking to a good friend here in where I live in Australia, Tony, and we talk regularly. We work together as well, good friends. And I was saying it's like when you get a car, especially a nice car, maybe a new car, and you don't necessarily read the manual, but you make sure you take it in for a service every 6 months. You make sure there's air in the tires, make sure the brakes are good. You fill it up with fuel, and now that I'm a little bit older, you clean it. You clean it inside and out, right? And you drive this, and you drive it within its parameters, right? You don't drive it like a race car if it's not a race car. You don't drive it like a four-wheel drive if it's not a four-wheel drive. My lovely young son, Zach, is learning this because he is driving it. That ain't happening. And so this thing's constantly breaking and what have you. Right. Well, your body is the same way. And so I've been kind of like doing what I want to do from my mind's point of view. I want to go here, body serve me, go. Yeah. But really what I'm now learning as I get a little bit older is the body has, like a car, certain ways to work. And if you can do the 6 month service, if you can keep air in the tires, if you can do the equivalents for your body, which have to do with exercise, diet, sunshine, all these sorts of sleeping, all these sorts of things, as you kind of cleave to its structure, I cannot tell you how much of a better emotional ride you have and mental ride you have if you just maintain. And that's what I didn't really know, right? So now I'm finding the results of that.
For most of the folks will be listening to this, but this is also available at mattwilsonband.com and then on YouTube, and you can watch it. Tim, the last few sentences has been pointing to his mind, which is a perfect segue to the next hook. It says, Hooks 46, the pursuit of a meaningful life begins with seeking what is challenging. So we were talking about, okay, get a jumpstart your body, get the machine working. We've talked about forecast the need for change and reinvention. But some of that motivation has to come and can only come from something that's meaningful. As I began to talk to people about the different projects that I'm working on, you can hear a different level of excitement from me when I start to talk about the book and start to talk about my aspirations to speak about the book and to share the thoughts in the book. It's where I'm finding my most meaning right now in my endeavors. Again, I don't want to give the impression that the other things that I'm doing, that I'm not giving it my all, but it's just, there is something that's new and challenging and exciting. I mean, I'm kind of feeling that way right now. My body's responding. I'm so excited about the possibilities and where this all can go. But again, the hook, explain to me where you think the part where it says, okay, it's the pursuit of a meaningful life begins with seeking what is challenging. How do you think meaning and challenge fit together, Tim?
Well, I think they're very connected, but I want to begin maybe with a cautionary tale, because I can tell you what happens when you don't. Okay. So there's a lot of momentum in the world right now around the negative aspects of the challenges psychologically around fear, stress, depression, anxiety, right? I believe the numbers are in the US, something like 30% of the adult population has concerns in that space, which is massive. The rest of the world is like 4%. America's about 30. And those numbers have absolutely skyrocketed with the advent of not only COVID, which has had its own challenges, but also just ubiquitous challenges like climate change, to say nothing of whatever's happening politically and what have you, right? Okay. So to talk to that, what I have found is that if you, I started to have periods of time, this is in the last couple of years, but in the last 6 and 12 months especially, where I would have some empty time. And I think you actually wrote about this in the hook yourself, right? So you'd change circumstance and you had some time to yourself and you're thinking, this is great. This is a party. And I think that the general thought while you're working hard or what have you is, I just need that time off, man. And I'm going to, maybe I'm going to party. So I'm going to drink and I'm going to eat and all that stuff. I've got to tell you, drinking and eating gets tired extremely quickly, to say nothing about what it does to your body and therefore your mind.
Yeah.
But then you start saying stuff like, okay, cool, I'm going to do holiday type stuff, right? So, but I'm at home. So maybe I'm around here, it's stuff like watch TV. And I personally find that watching TV or the internet, right? So YouTube, memes, whatever, I got no patience for it. My kids are endless on this stuff. They love it. I cannot watch it. Rest of my family is okay. And then like serialized television, like binge watching, like how many episodes of MASH can you watch? I can't do it. So I've got this time in front of me and I'm looking around going, okay, I don't want to watch TV. Okay, I'll read a book. So we've got lots of books around here, go to the library, what have you, but then I'll get to a spot where I've gone, okay, I've read enough books. All right, I've eaten enough, I've read enough books, I've done the washing, I've got this. And what I have found happens, and I consider myself a pretty positive, motivated kind of a guy, is left with too much time. I don't know that I'm great company to myself. I could start to swirl and spiral in directions that aren't great, right? And find my levels of motivation and what have you going down with too much empty space. Now, I'm sure there are plenty of people where that's not the case. Maybe that's just me, and maybe it's because there are a lot of these things have been around the last few years. But I actually found if I leave that time empty, that's bad. So the answer is that, or what I'm saying here is, the opposite of seeking challenge is seeking not challenge or emptiness. And I got to tell you, that does not sit well. We started hitting a spot where we were actively forecasting a retirement state of our life. In other words, through the financial stuff that I was talking about and what have you, we were predicting, okay, we'd be in a spot where we could just stop working. We had more investment income than we needed to live. And so we're kind of like playing with that. And I kind of went, you know what? This is awful. This is depressing. You know, after you've watched enough TV, after you've read enough books, after you've eaten enough food, I don't want to do nothing. Yeah. It's awful. And my mind just turns on itself. It just does. Yeah. So I actually find that to seek challenge is actually critical. It's not even just a fun idea. In other words, if you don't have, enough going on in your life, things that are challenging and growing you, the opposite is you could spiral. But the great news is, and you could see I have these endless mind maps full of
Oh,
stuff to do, right?
Yeah, wonderful.
That
Yes.
On any one given day, I've got I create challenges. Here's my challenge. I want to do a feature film. That is a huge challenge.
Big.
That's $100 million challenge right there.
Right.
Okay, let's break it down to something I can maybe approach. Maybe it's not $100 million. Okay, we'll do a short film.
Right.
Okay, the first short film, that challenge, that was a 3-minute thing, right? So how do you even write the script for that? Well, now we're doing 20-ish, 25-minute scripts, right? With characters and locations, and we're out shooting this stuff. So the challenge is expanding. And I'm constantly seeking what's the next piece. Okay, let's do that, but with action sequences. Let's do that, but with visual effects. Let's do that, but with the next level of videography, photography. Let's do that, but with a bigger social media campaign. Let's do that, but let's go after 100,000 views. So I'm constantly seeking that next challenge to be alive and lively and finding my passion there. And it's almost like, and I don't have a better way of saying this because I feel excited and to do these things in the same way that you're excited about this book, and you kind of get the physiology going because you're like, oh yeah, this is fun.
Yeah.
I feel like purpose in that sense. The clues are around passion. The clues are around challenge, but also I'm finding to some extent it's just like a decision. What is my purpose? I decide. I'm deciding it's this thing that I'm loving, and this is my chance to make a contribution and to be of service in a way that makes sense to me. This is, I think, what I can bring to the world. And in that sense, the why I'm here, which is a chosen thing as much as anything else. So I don't know if I've gone too far there, but that's what I would say about a meaningful life. Challenge to be challenged is to breathe. You need to work your muscles to keep them. Otherwise, they atrophy. And the same thing is absolutely true with your mind. You need to find and seek that challenge in whatever areas of your life. And from that, I have found and made decisions around purpose.
And I can hear it in your voice. I mean, as you just were talking there, I could see it in your face, and you're demonstrative, and the excitement is there. You mentioned that these projects, that like these films that you're putting together, that they also had they were message driven a little bit, that they had some meaning behind
entirely.
Them. Yeah. What I was gonna say that, and I'm gonna have to, I don't want to stumble. I want to just read what I wrote in the book because I don't want to stumble through. But real quick, I say, so a fundamental psychological theory that supports this idea is Erik Erikson, the idea of finding meaning in your work and challenge in your work. Erik Erikson's stages of development, he lays out 8 stages we all experience. Erikson theorizes that a person encounters a psychosocial crisis in each stage that can have a positive or negative outcome. A positive outcome in each stage sets us up for a healthy personality and a solid foundation for the next stage. My summary suggests that stages 1 through 6 are self-centered, like learning how to walk and talk and finding a mate and finding a job. Then we get to stage 7. He calls it generativity versus stagnation. Erikson defined generativity as a concern for and guiding the next generation. This is accomplished through teaching, parenting, mentoring, and by being productive at work. The opposite of this, stagnation, leaves one with a feeling of dissatisfaction due to their inability or unwillingness to be productive and contribute. So then the final stage is integrity versus despair. Simply stated, we look back on life and see how we did. I find it interesting that the stage right before the final evaluation involves learning how to be meaningful to others. One can infer that a well-rounded and properly developed person spends the first half of their life preparing to ultimately give hope and guidance to their fellow man. Tim, it sounds like that you're following this path exactly. You in the beginning, you were making these your TV shows and your comedy. Now you were making these children books and things, but it was all about creating these things. And then you came about, and then you began to move into teaching other people. But it was teaching them. They were paying you, and you were helping them with marketing and learning how to do their craft. But now it sounds like that you are creating art, movies, songs. You are creating things with the sole purpose of teaching positive lessons to those that are going to watch these things. Is that correct?
It is the absolute heart of it. And to get a little more detail in it, the way I see it, and I hope this isn't, triggering anyone, what have you, but for, I don't know, thousands of years, the way people really gathered meaning and context was to go sit down in the church, right? Across the planet, go and you on the weekend, when it happens to be, sit down with a bunch of other people, and you focus and you listen to one person talk to you, and they're reading to you, from the Bible and so on, and you're gathering meaning. Fantastic. I personally believe that while that is still an absolutely valid model, absolutely meaningful and helpful to many millions of people, there's sort of a second church that has emerged. For me, that's film. What happens is 100 people go into a room. When else do you do this? They switch off all the lights and they say nothing. When do you sit in a dark room for an hour or two and say nothing, do nothing? You don't touch your phone, hopefully. You don't talk to your neighbor. And you are mesmerized by this story, which, when done, in my opinion, done well, is a parable for living, and also, of course, people do this in front of their television and now on their phones watching YouTube and what have you. But it's that space that's fascinating to me. If I was looking to influence a generation right now, I would make a film to do it, So the things that we're doing are absolutely about meaning. And if there isn't meaning, it can be to do with empowerment. It can be, whatever it happens to be, then I ain't making that. Right. So, and it's not a film for me. And there's often moments in these films which we identify and go, that's it. This whole thing. For example, there's a little short film we've done that we've written and cast and we're shooting called Touched. And it comes down to a sentence or two about empowerment. And it's the other, whatever that is, 15, 20 minutes, what have you, of that whole piece that frames it and makes it powerful and really brings it into you, that moment of insight. And really, for me, that's why I'm doing this at all, is to bring that moment of insight to people, right? And to have that ideally measurable impact, that moment of where people kind of go, oh yeah, I get it. I'm going to move what I'm doing a little bit in response to that. That's why we're doing it. And I know it's powerful. Just to give you an example, my family, up until recently, and my children ate pretty much whatever they wanted to eat. And then there was a Netflix special called Game Changers. And it happens to be about stuff that I've been talking to the family about, kids about, one way or another for a good long time. So it's my wife. But, kids, they do their own thing. Whenever I'm going to eat, whatever I'm going to eat. Well, we watch this movie that says pretty much the same stuff, right? But particularly has to do with great diet, exercise. But now it's kind of Hollywood's the thing, right? So now instead of it's me, Dad, you're telling me stuff.
He doesn't know nothing.
Dad. Right now, it's suddenly mixed martial arts champions and Olympic athletes and kind of, appeal. Like, I want to be that girl. I want to be that guy. Right. Yeah. So it's these amazing models, and it's now adding some science in there, but in this way that's kind of dramatic and fun. Two of my kids turned vegetarian overnight.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they were influenced by the movie
in a huge way. And now they are reaping the benefits of those health decisions. So I'm fascinated with this idea of creating purposeful entertainment. And I want it to have a cover story that looks like the movie you want to go see, right? So I want it to look like that romantic comedy you want to go see. I want it to look like that action adventure you want to go see. But then it has this context. There will be other people who want to make, for example, movies in, say, the horror genre. It's a hot genre. People love it. I think there's something called The Squid Game, which I'm not going to watch. A lot of people die. I'm not making that one. That one, for me, doesn't bring meaning and contribution to the world in a way that I'd want to. Right. You hit the nail on the head, man. That's what I'm doing.
Well, so I think as we segue into the final hook here, but looking at that is that find things that are challenging, but also really look inside and see how you can be helpful to your fellow man. It's part of our natural. We talked about jump starting our bodies by jumping in pool and running in the sun. Well, we're also made and built to help each other out, be kind to each other, be loving to each other. And I don't want to say I struggle, but I'll have conversations with it in inner dialogue where I'm like, well, Matt, you want this book to be successful and you want to be recognized as a thought leader or a speaker or whatever it may be. And that's true. I'm not going to deny that. I mean, that is part of this, but you've read the book, you know, everything comes from, because I experienced these things, and I'm saying I've experienced it. I think I can be helpful here. I think I can help you. Maybe I can show you a corner to cut a little bit. So maybe you don't have to experience that just like I did. And maybe you get through that fast, whatever. And I really sincerely feel that way. I feel a direction to be helpful, to be useful to others. Right. And that is, it's challenging, but it also creates meaning, which is the point of what we were talking about in the hook.
Well, absolutely. And just to speak to that on your behalf for a second, because, you know, I have known you a good long time. And I think you have some extraordinary natural gifts when it comes to what you do on stage and with music and with groups of people. Man alive, I still haven't seen anyone to hit where you hit that. It's amazing to now be turning around to say, how do I use that to be of service? I think everyone, one way or another, winds up as a human I think, to be of service. That's the game.
Yes.
Especially later in the day. Yeah. It becomes clearer. And you're turning now, you're saying, how do I turn all of that experience and all this lifetime of knowledge and wisdom into that? So, and I think you genuinely, absolutely, what you're saying, you know, what you're pitching, or you're selling, I'm buying, right? I agree with you. And I think you will, I think you will certainly be of service. But I want to just go one step further in my experience of this, because I've spent a fair bit of time on stage. I've been as a speaker pretty much around the planet, and I've had a chance to do some of the stuff that you're getting ready to go do, which is that there is a group of people, whether they are in the room or whether they're reading a book or whether they're watching the YouTube videos, for whom your voice is the breakthrough voice. Your energy is the communication is what has been missing, and they can't hear it from somebody else. They can't hear it from their mom or their dad, or they can't hear it from their educators or their mentors, or they can't hear it from, you know, I don't know, Tony Robbins or some amazing figure that gets to so many people so gracefully. Something about you and something about how you do what you do is that thing. And not only that, because I think you are the only person for them, and there is a group of them that is emergingly bigger and bigger and what have you. Not only that, but when they give you feedback, because they will, and they are, and you're already hearing it, that is, that's the dopamine high. That's that moment of, yes, living my purpose. That feedback, which you've been getting, and especially when the feedback is for a thing that is your creation. It's not singing someone else's song. It's singing your song. It's this book, for example, is your song, right? Yeah. And it's when you get recognition and feedback for that you're kind of like, okay, job done, box ticked. I have lived.
Let's go. I know that thing. Look, I don't want the listener to move past this point too quickly, because I mentioned that you were a mentor of mine, and what you just said has been one of the most meaningful things that you've said to me. And I actually have referenced that as part of my journey of talking about this book. I was on an interview the other day with a radio show or podcast, and they just started it out, and they said, look, we've read through your book. We think it's great, but it's centering around tips on performance and some motivation. And honestly, there's so many of those out there. Why? And they weren't being adversarial. They were just asking, there's so many out there. Why did you write it? And I said, well, I'll tell you why I wrote it. The guy that I hired to help me write it, he said, Matt, you write this book because there are people out there that will only hear this message from your experience and your voice. And that gave me confidence that in a sea full of books and a sea filled with people that are saying things that are very similar, I know that there's just some people, maybe it's just a few, or maybe it's many. It doesn't really matter, but my story is going to resonate with them, and maybe it can be helpful to them. And so I owe it to myself to tell the story, because I feel it's inside of me bubbling it out. And then ultimately, if it's going to be helpful, I owe it to them to get it out there. And so anybody listening out there that's wondering, why should I create this? Or why should I start that? Or maybe why should I reinvent myself? Because there's a part of us that needs you to, because we are only going to receive this powerful message from you. So go do it, please. Right. I mean, I didn't want to I know I just really just repeated what you just said. I want not want to step on it. I just want to let you know how meaningful it was to me when you told me that in the beginning. Otherwise, I may not have pursued the project at all. So,
absolutely, I'm with you.
The last hook here, and I appreciate your time, Tim. Thank you. This last hook kind of just is I mean, this is a big one, but hook 29, plan for the future, don't live in it. Now I'm gonna say something here. When I first wrote this hook, the first idea was it was a business hook. You know, the book is broken down into different things. This initially was a business hook because I'd find that people would sit around, and even myself, and we would talk about what we're gonna do and how, and then what's going to happen when we do all that. And we'd spend all our time talking about what we're going to do. And then I finally think, well, so let's stop talking about what we're going to do. Let's just start doing it. You got to do one thing first. You got to get going before you could have, we're going to make a record, but have we even put a mic on the kick drum yet? Let's go. Let's get to work. Right. But then as the book is feedback between all the team and everybody, I expanded that to be more of a mindfulness, live in the moment, pay attention. So how does this hook come into your world? The plan of the future, don't live in it.
This is great because this is a great one to finish with, actually. So plan for the future, don't live in it. I got to give you another cautionary tale.
Okay. Oh, this is good.
So this is actually pretty recent. So but I think everyone's going to understand this. So I'm a huge planner. I'm a huge planner. I wrote a book called The Life Summit, which is all about not just business, but life planning, with the idea that when you have clarity about what it is that you want in your future, whether it's a year out or 10 years out, then you begin to kind of resonate and align with that. And all of the opportunities and experiences start to kind of, come to you in this way. I found that to be absolutely true. So I'm a huge planner, and I actually still do my own Life Summit, which is kind of a day of planning every year. And I still write it out, and I still print that thing up as a book. I've got a whole bunch of volumes of them sitting over there, right, one after the other, and I do it every year. But what you then need to do is put that book to one side. In other words, to be very clear about the what. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. But then start to release the how. And the how is saying live in the now, right? Let that go. Let's see how it shows up. Live where I am. That's what I want. That's great. And this is unfolding in the moment. Because here's the cautionary tale. I recently took a misstep in this space, and I got really, really attached to the specific way that we were going to get to a big moment, which is my 50th birthday, which is coming up. And I started envisioning this day, that would be the day I'd retire. I'd be retired at 50. And I started to get attached to this, almost like a brag, I retired at 50. 50, that's young. It's quite young. All right. So I almost started to get attached to it, but really it wasn't so much from an ego point of view, although that was true. For me, it was about the freedom. So I started calling it Freedom Day, right? This is when I'm going to be able to I don't have to work ever again. If I don't want to, I get, right, which we've now found didn't work. Talking about that. Or I can start, just choose 100% the projects I want to do, whether that's with clients or otherwise. So I get really attached, and I'm getting attached to a business model that's going to get me and the clients that I'm working with, and how much income I'm going to get in the course of every month. It's going to get me to that financial target and so on. And I'm writing it out, and I'm talking to people about it, and I'm chatting with my friends, and I'm getting attached. I'm planning for the future. And then what happened was it changed. And it didn't happen the way that I thought. And so some things changed. I won't say we lost clients, because that's not true, but things completely changed. And it freaked me out. Matt, I had some dark days. We had a period of a couple of weeks where we were working out these transitions, and I got knocked off my perch. The rug got pulled out from under me, and I felt awful.
This is recent too.
Recent.
I know
it's
the
last couple of months.
I know it is, because you were, when I talked to you last, like a good conversation, you were promoting the Freedom 50, retire at 50. That was your story. So this is personal. This is a little personal behind the curtain. I'm learning this.
Absolutely.
This is a little different from the last time we talked.
So So what's happened is, what happened, which was great, was actually all of the work and so forth changed, and we're in a great spot. I would actually argue we're in a better spot than we were before.
Right.
So it's turned out beautifully, but those 3 weeks were choppy. They were awful. I do remember the worst of it was one day where I was so upset after a call. My wife was with me and she put me to bed. I didn't want to be awake.
Wow.
Right. So here I am in the middle of the day. I went and had a nap because I was so upset. My energy was so low. The nap helped me get my energy back up. I started to reframe things and off I went. But what I would say is that if you really plan and you really get so attached to how whatever that thing is going to show up, and then it changes on you, which it does, because that is life. Welcome to it. Right. Then you can go to a dark place. Whereas if you can be in a mindful, a flexible place where it's kind of more like, look at this amazing, interesting unfolding. Oh, that happened. Oh, that's interesting. Now your gaze widens and all of these things can come in, right? So now you can see widely and all these opportunities become available to you because you can see them. So I'd almost call it kind of like clinched versus unclinched. It's narrow versus wide. So plan, yes, absolutely, but don't live in the detail of that plan, because so you've narrowed yourself so much, that's an awful way to live. So it's probably not quite what you were saying, but it's kind of my interpretation, my spin on it, which is to be in that present moment and to be open to what comes and to be comfortable with the whatever it is that does happen. And my mantra is a little bit, let's see what happens. This is all very interesting, and whatever comes, I'll deal. Right? Whatever comes, I'll find a way. It's going to be great. It's probably even going to be better. And you know what? 9 times out of 10 it is.
I can relate to that specifically. I live in a, I've been moving around a little bit over the years, and I'm still, my business is still based out of Austin, Texas, with my band and the different venues that I work with. But we've moved twice in the last 4 years. Once we moved to New Orleans, and then last year we moved to Jacksonville. And so I find myself introducing my product and who I am to new markets, and it can be challenging. It can be challenging. It's no secret in the book, and anybody I talk to, I'm a spiritual man. I'm a faithful man. I write about it. I talk about it. And so in my time, as I pray about these things, as I say, I'll pray to God, hey, let's talk about these opportunities that have come along, but I'll have specific opportunities in my mind. Right. And when I realized the other day that the specific opportunities weren't showing up, but I had so many other opportunities that were coming down, other gigs, other things. Right. And so my moments of reflection, my moments of prayer, my spiritual time, I was, as you said, I was focused on one thing, but I wasn't paying attention to everything else that was going on that in essence was exactly what I was praying for, hoping for. Right. And
right. But the gaze was too narrow to see.
My gaze was like, well, I want that right there. And as in my story, I'm talking to God, and God's like, well, what about all this other stuff going on? Right. So I'll get caught as we talk about living in the moment. Right. I came up with this little saying the other day. What is my 5-minute future? Because I get so caught up in waiting on this phone call, waiting on that email, having that meeting, or I got this podcast, or I have this performance tonight. That's a big deal. It's a new venue. I'm trying it out. And I was just like so far in the future. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to cure going to the future, but I'm going to narrow my future to 5 minutes. What am I doing the next 5 minutes? And really honing in on that. Okay. So my 5-minute future, what is my 5-minute? Well, I'm going to go eat some cereal. That's what we're going to do the next 5 minutes. Okay. Right. I'm going to send Tim that Zoom link for our podcast. That's my 5-minute future. I don't have any other thing. And then after the 5 minutes, what's my next 5-minute future? That's kind of helped me, a little thing to say. Another thing is,
I like it. Very catchy.
Cool. I just introduced that to the world here.
That's a song waiting to happen.
Yeah. My 5-minute future. Right.
Yeah.
I read this book called Breath by James Nestor. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's all about breathing and the different things. And I'm sure people could read it and disagree with some things, whatever. And that's not the point of me bringing it up. It was more, I really liked the book because breathing is a big part of, as a singer, breathing is a big part. And then also as a focus technique, breathing. I mean, there's a lot of things that are very important about breathing, obviously. But that's another thing that I've been doing to stay in the moment is breathing in for 6 seconds, breathing out, right? It centers you. It puts the thought in the most fundamental thing that we do as people, which is breathe, you know. And I think that we're all saying the same thing, that staying in the moment is such a cliche. Just be in the moment. Well, we've heard that, but no, really. Things, you said it, things are going to work out one way or the other, and you're going to deal with them when they get there. So it's like that quote from, I don't know who, but in the book I referenced the quote, worrying seems to be the responsible thing to do. I don't know who said it, but that's really cool. Right.
Yeah,
right?
Not the helpful thing necessarily, but
not necessarily.
Certainly. And look, it's interesting you talk about this because, again, recently I've been playing kind of with this biochemistry thing. And so your body and mind are so connected, right? So what you do with your body influences your mind and the other way. So your breathing, as you just said, can affect your sense of being in the moment. Here's one I just learned, which is really interesting to me, which is your gaze, your eyesight is very important too. Now, if you have a narrow gaze, let's say you're focused in this case on a phone, or back in the day, you're hunting the tiger, right? So you're running and your gaze is narrowed, right? Mm-hmm. Particularly as a man, right? You probably don't notice if you get scratched by the branch along the way, you're hunting. You don't notice if your foot gets twisted, you're hunting, right? Mm-hmm. And so now your stress goes up, your adrenaline goes up, your breathing goes up, your anxiety, whatever, all of those things are all right. narrow gaze, right? And so we're getting these responses when we do things like get stuck into our phone or really get into something really, really narrow. It's actually stress and anxiety producing. Now, which is amazing.
No, this is powerful. This is crazy.
Right?
Good stuff.
Now, if you go the other way consciously and you sit and you widen your gaze, kind of allow it to sort of blur, dilate, widen to where you can almost see your own body, your own arms, right? Then what happens is the opposite of that. It is relaxing, but not only is it associated with relaxing, it's associated with vision and ideas. It's also typically associated with connection to God, connection to spirit, right? And the punchline to this, when I was being told about it, was this is why it's so good when you go to the top of a mountain and you see the view, because you look at this expansive view. This is why we all like to go to lookouts, because you see this expansive view and you widen your gaze to see all of it, right? The up, the down, the sky, the mountains, or wherever you are. And actually that brings with it, right? It brings with it a sense of peace, a sense of relaxation, a sense of calm, and a connection, like that idea that bounces into your head when you're looking at the view, because you come up with it. That insight comes with that. And then look at how things like meditation and so forth can work, right? So this idea of wide view being relaxed, calm, visionary ideas versus narrow view fits in now with what you're talking about as well. And I'm kind of like, I haven't even started to kind of really use this, but as a conscious tool, I'm kind of like, wow.
Well, you better hurry up and use that. Otherwise I'm taking it, because I'm going to run with it. I mean,
I learned it from somebody else. So
I see so much. That's so powerful, Tim, because something that I'm working on now, as I'm working on some of these things I'm going to speak about and all that, is that we have the power to choose what we give our attention to, right? And if you look at the idea of a narrow gaze or a wide gaze, and as you said, when we're narrow and we're filled with anxiety and we're just so focused and we can't see, but you said if we can choose to spread that out and have a wide gaze of the big picture and see things and calm us down, we can also then, if we train our bodies, we could also then choose when to focus narrowly. And if we know that we are choosing to focus narrowly, then maybe we wouldn't be as anxious when we are focusing narrowly. There are times when we just need to focus on this one thing. But if we're doing it out of a reaction, out of fear, is this going to work out? I can only see this thing and I can't get an idea of the bigger picture. That's going to create anxiety. But if we know, okay, right now this deserves my narrow focus, or right now I should be in a space of a wide focus, a wide gaze, then we can not only can control how our body's reacting to these thoughts that come in our head, but we can also choose to be in the moment, knowing that there is a wide view to see. Does that make sense?
It really does. And I think that's what you said about the choice. That's the powerful thing. So you say, okay, I'm writing a song, wide gaze.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm prayer, I'm connecting to spirit, wide gaze. I'm stressed right now, I want to be not stressed, widen the gaze, change the breathing, right? And then I want to be focused, I've got to really hunt this, I've got to do this essay, I've got to, get this right now, narrow gaze.
Narrow gaze.
As a parent, I cannot help but map this onto my children, because they have, sometimes they're going to have these stressful and anxious responses. We're seeing more anxiety and stress in the world than really ever before. And what are they doing? Yeah. Living in their phone. What happens if you help them widen their gaze, particularly regularly over time? And what's the outcome of that? Which I'm fascinated by. And I should give credit where it's due, by the way. I'm listening to a couple of podcasts, but the one that's given me a lot is this guy called Huberman, Huberman, and he's got a podcast called Huberman Lab. It's a bit technical for me, but I'm listening to him on other podcasts and I'm picking up pieces. But what he's done in his lab is study the biology of this. So they're looking at this at a chemical level. Yeah. So this ain't just kind of a made up thing. So it's not just like, I find the alignment between the science and then like a 2,000-year-old Indian, meditation technique, to be amazing, right? That those things are so well aligned. But that's where I've been playing in the last couple of weeks, and then taking these techniques, bring them back to myself, my friends, and my family as well. And I don't know, we got there from 29. Don't plan for the future, don't live in it. But maybe we got to a helpful place for someone there.
No, I think that we did. Tim, man, I'm telling you, can we do this weekly? I think okay, I'm going to now. This is a weekly podcast on the hook with Matt Wilson and Tim Levy. Now we're going to really change these lives out there, because no, I'm joking there, but I am serious. Tim, you have changed my life. I know thanks, that,
appreciate that.
Maybe I know at times that, like I said, the project got difficult with us, but in the big picture, you were there, and your effort with me was meaningful to me, and I want you to know that. And I know that those that are listening to this today, you've said some really, folks, if you didn't get it, go back and rewind, listen to it again. There is a lot of things here that's very powerful. And I'll highlight the main one, which is get on TikTok. I think that was the essence, of the talk today. Get on TikTok. I'm writing that down as we. No, there's so much more there. Tim, go to Tim's website. Visit him how you can through email or whatever it may be. And Tim, I'll probably call you next week, because that's what we do, right?
Let's do it. Absolutely. And thank you. And look, it's been a mutual good impact in terms of, life, love, and good things together. It's always, it's great having you as a friend. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for listening. Take care, Tim.